You're listening to Ace Podcast Nation, the hottest new podcast network and YouTube channel in the UK, featuring original series, top guests, expert analysts, and more. Check out facebook.com/Acecast Nation for news on latest guests and shows. Watch every show in full at youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation.
Yes lads, UFC Fighter Jack Show here. You can catch me on the latest episode of Ace Podcast Nation. Make sure to give them a subscribe on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation, and looking forward to get back on there soon. Speak to you all soon.
Champion, welcome, Danny Batten. Fucking number one. You win.
Hey guys, I'm Si and welcome to Ace Podcast Nation, the home of the Danny Batten Fight Show. This is episode number 55 and it's the last show of 2020. I gotta say, I will be very glad to see the back of 2020 because it has been bad news after bad news after bad news. So what we thought we'd do, as there's no UFC till the 16th of January, I think it is, we are going to go back into the retro reviews, probably, well, starting next week, but what we thought we'd do, because with Christmas and everything, very busy, lots of eating and drinking to be done, so me and Danny didn't really have enough time to watch like a full old UFC fight and a boxing match, so we decided we're going to discuss 2020 as a whole. We're going to look back at some of the best fights, or some of the fights we've enjoyed the most, some of the guests we've had on the show, how the show's changed, just have a general review of the year, as it were. But as usual, you can find this show and all the other many great shows we've got on the channel, featuring top guests, expert analysts and more at youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation. You can also follow us on social media. If you want to just follow the MMA and boxing stuff, then follow at Danny Batten FS, which is on Twitter and Instagram, and that's just just the MMA and boxing stuff. But on the Ace Podcast Nation show, you'll have all the different shows and audio versions of every single show at your favourite podcast platform. Just search Ace Podcast Nation. But joining me to look back at the horrific year that is 2020, it is former Cage Warriors champion, UK MMA legend for the last time this year. It is Mr. Danny Batten. Welcome, my friend, and happy holidays.
Yes, thank you, Simon. Everyone that's listening, I hope you've all had a good Christmas as much as we can do with all the restrictions that have been cursing our lives. But I'm still enjoying, having a little break from the old routine, so to speak, with work and what have you. It's nice to, be at home, sitting my bum down, eating, drinking, gaining weight.
Yes, going for heavyweight. That's for the big return, isn't it? It's going to be a heavyweight.
I'm touching light heavyweight at the minute. I'm around about 93, 94 kgs. And when you think that I was fighting 30 kgs lighter than that, that's quite scary.
Imagine what you're going to be like by New Year's Eve. Woof.
Yes.
But talking of light heavyweight, because, we are professionals, we link in nicely. It looks like Adesanya versus Blauser's own. It's been rumoured for the last couple of days. I thought I saw something earlier. I thought I saw a notification saying that it was official, but I just had a quick look. It doesn't seem to be official, but March the 9th, I think it was, Adesanya Blauser. I got to say, I am looking forward to it. However, I do feel for some of those light heavyweight contenders who have been hopped.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of cutting the queue. a little bit, but if anyone's deserving, he is. He's he's done fantastic. He's looked truly untouchable in his weight division. So it's going to create a lot of interest, nevertheless, for fans. I'm sure they don't mind either or way, but I imagine there's a few people muttering some disapprovals behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? You had John Jones has vacated, so it's been like a bit of a free-for-all who can get that title. Blauser is the guy. Adesanya has destroyed everyone at middleweight, and no one looks like getting near him. They want to do Adesanya versus John Jones. That is the money fight for the UFC, and if Adesanya's got to go in there, he's got to be impressive in this. It's effectively a John Jones eliminator, isn't it? It's like a number one contender to face John Jones, because I would think that whoever wins that is going to face John Jones later in the year. What is interesting is John Jones vacated the light heavyweight title to move to heavyweight. I can't imagine Adesanya is going to fight at heavyweight, so John Jones is going to have to come down, or they're going to have to do it at catch weight. And the thing is, if let's do a hypothetical scenario, Dan. What if Adesanya beats Blauser for the light heavyweight title, and but in the meantime, during the first 6 months of 2021, what if John Jones was to beat Stipe Miocic? John Jones might suddenly have an interest in the light heavyweight title again.
Yeah, I don't know how it's going to play out. It's all a guessing game, really. But it looks like they're trying to build the Adesanya and Jones fight, but Adesanya's got to be effective in the light heavyweights. And
you don't want to look past Jan Blauser.
No. I mean, I think he's got a difficult task there. He's going to give away natural size. So I think a lot of what makes him effective in the middleweight division is going to be somewhat diminished in his effectiveness in the light heavyweights. People are going to be able to take those precision strikes of his and run through them and close in on him, which we've never seen. We just don't see people closing in on him and taking him down. I think in that weight division, quite possibly we'll start to see that and see him tested in areas that we haven't seen him tested in before. So he's got a lot to overcome, I think, before he can prove himself to take on someone like Jones.
Yeah, it's a weird one, isn't it? Because he's never really been put under a massive amount of pressure. He's had a couple of fights where he's maybe had to answer some questions, but he hasn't really had someone walk through his punches and put him under that pressure constantly. And Blauser is that guy. And Blauser has had a phenomenal 2020. He fought at the end of 2019 when he beat Sosa via, it doesn't say, decision. And then he fought Corey Anderson, beat him by TKO in the first round at the February 2020. Then September 2020, he beat Dominic Reyes in like 18 seconds of the second round, didn't he? So
yeah, he was really dominant. I remember he landing those devastating body kicks to set him up because they was opposite stance. And he kept kicking him to the body to get him steering to his power hand. It was a pretty impressive tactical performance.
Yeah, I remember at the time you were very impressed with the way he set him up. He set him up throughout the first round and then finished him early in the second. And I think, being honest, if you've got Dana White privately, not in public, and he was being perfectly honest, I think the UFC would have wanted Dominic Reyes to win that fight from a publicity point of view and PR point of view. He's their guy, isn't he? He's one of the commentators. He's very well spoken. He's good looking chap. And
he done ever so well against Jones himself. He looked really, really good. Pushed him close. It wasn't a complete mockery, which Jones does to so many people. He put up a really good performance, but then got taken apart systematically by Blauser. So it's going to be super interesting to see how these two weight divisions merge.
Yeah, and I mean, looking back at Adesanya's sort of year, we had he fought at the end of 2019. He smoked Robert Whittaker in a minute and a half of the second round, and Robert Whittaker, let's be honest, was on a massive tear for a while. Before that, he had been looking super impressive. Those fast hands. knocking people out while he was. I think that was for the title, wasn't it? Was that when Adesanya won the title against Whittaker, or was that the rematch?
I'm not too sure. Wasn't that a rematch? I'm not exactly Mr. Memory Man.
Yeah.
To reflect.
Yeah, looking. It doesn't say on here, but looking at, I think that was the title match because he won there, and then he defended against Yoel Romero, which was that was one of the worst fights of the year. That went 5 rounds back in March.
Yeah, it's a bore fest.
Yeah, and Adesanya took a lot of criticism in that fight for the way he fought it. But maybe Romero was one of those guys who, if he hadn't have fought the way he did, could have given him that bit of trouble like we talked about just a minute ago. No one's really put that pressure on him and taken him down, and maybe Romero was that guy, and he had to fight like that to be, to make sure he didn't get taken down. Yeah, absolutely. And then in the September, obviously, he beat Paulo Costa. A minute into the second round, he looked super impressive in that. I got to be honest. He gave Mr. Costa a bit of a tune in, and there was a bit of something. There was a bit of something there between them two as well, wasn't there? It was a big build up. It was it fizzled out to be a bit of a disappointment regards what the fans wanted to see. I think we thought we was going to see. People fancied Costa, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, and indeed I did. I thought this was going to be someone that could really take it to him and ruffle the feathers of Adesanya. But Adesanya, and he never had a hair out of place, did he? The whole time that he was in the cage, he dominated the strategy and the tactics from the get go, and then went for the kill and got it. Literally first try. It was a fantastic performance, and that makes you think. Maybe he can go and make impressions over 2 weights. Normally, when you see 2 weight champions, you've seen it down at featherweight up to lightweight, and we have seen it light heavyweight to heavyweight. But I don't think we've seen it middleweight to light heavyweight. I'm not too sure that we've seen a fighter being super effective.
It's a bigger jump, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, just very quickly, we mentioned Yoel Romero just there. He's obviously with Bellator now. Scott Coker had initially said that he would never sign, he wouldn't sign Yoel Romero, but he changed his mind. And Romero's signed to Bellator, which, whilst I would prefer them to be focused on maybe some younger talent, I think Yoel Romero's still in that bracket where he's got a little bit more to offer than he's not quite up there. Do you know what I mean? He's not up there in like the freak show level of age. He's just coming towards the end of his career, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely in
past his peak.
Twilight.
But not,
I would say he's past his peak, but he hasn't been in those horrendous wars. He's pretty much looked after himself.
He hasn't taken damage like someone like Tony Ferguson or something like that. He hasn't taken that sort of damage.
That's
Sorry
right.
to interrupt you, mate. He's been going away. He was in Strikeforce back in 2008. But I mean, one thing I think we've talked about, particularly in the latter part of this year, is about these young fighters challenging themselves against these big names who were perhaps past their peak but on their way down. Whether we said about Jack Shaw challenging someone like a Jose Aldo or someone like this. These are the guys, and I think in Bellator, Yoel Romero is a real tough fight for a young middleweight who's perhaps getting a bit of momentum in Bellator. Not quite at the title level. If he can go in there and fight and beat Yoel Romero convincingly, then you've got a superstar in your hand. If Yoel Romero wins, then Yoel Romero can do the title fight. I can see the benefits to it. It's intelligent.
Romero's got. He's got to take on a lot of difficult propositions going over to Bellator. He's a highly contested name in UFC. So. In many of these matches that he's going to have in Bellator, he's going to have it all to lose and not a lot to gain.
Yes.
And what about motivation? He's been on the biggest stage. I mean, UFC is the biggest stage. He's been on that for quite a number of years. Been in some massive promotional fights, and now he's kind of degrading or downgrading to Bellator. Not to take anything away from Bellator.
No, of course.
We've been quite vocal about our disappointments and our questionable thoughts about how Bellator go about things and how they.
They have done some good things this year. I think it's fair to say as well.
They have, but some very, very questionable ones as well. So, but my point is, how is Romero going to, deal with that? Is he going to be just as motivated as he ever has in terms of his training and focus. It'd be interesting to see because, you know, I'm not too sure how I'd feel being on the biggest stage at his age and then coming down a peg or two and still motivate myself to
well,
try
he didn't
and be
always
the best I can be.
Yeah, he didn't always look like super motivated, did he? In fairness, I was just trying to find the Bellator rankings of ridiculously hard to find on the internet because I wanted to see. I in my head, I was thinking, I'm sure that Bellator, that middleweight division is one of their stronger divisions, but I can't think off the top of my head or who stands out there, who's the guys. So I was just trying to find them, but they haven't got, like UFC, you just go onto the website and it's there. So the middleweight champion is... Could you tell me who the Bellator middleweight champion is, Dan?
That will be... the Brazilian striking dude, isn't it?
Gerhard Mousasi.
Yeah, Mousasi. He is Brazilian, isn't it?
No, he's Dutch.
No?
Dutch.
Oh, Dutch.
Yeah, he beat
I know
Douglas Lima.
Guy. That's right, yeah. Lima come up a weight, didn't he?
He did, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't find the rankings, so I apologise. We can't do much about that. But it'd be interesting. I think Romero's a decent signing for Bellator to, you know, it gives someone a good challenge, a good fight. It's a big fight as well. He's a big name, but I guess it'll depend on, you know, who they've got to really push it. What else have we got before we go into our little year review? Oh, we mentioned double champions, obviously, this year. We had Mason Jones on the show a couple of times, and the last time we had him on, obviously, he was just before he went for the second of his two belts. And that was for light heavyweight, I think, wasn't it? The second. Or was he went for light heavyweight Cage Warriors title, didn't he? Because I remember discussing with you whether, you know, he might not be big enough to take on the guy, but
yeah, I mean, he looked like he gave away a lot of height, didn't he?
Yeah, he looked quite small, didn't he?
Yeah, he did look small, but my goodness, this guy is talented. He's got the hands, he's got the takedown capabilities, and
lightweight. It wasn't light heavyweight. It was lightweight. I didn't know whether I misheard you, so I was a little bit. Did you say light heavyweight? Yeah, lightweight. Lightweight up to welterweight. That's right, and he.
Because that is a big weight jump. That's a big weight jump right there.
Yeah, it is, and he looked small, didn't he? Let's be honest. Against the lad who he won his second title for, he looked the smaller of the two fighters, and but you wouldn't have thought when the fight started that he was the one who would come up a weight, because he decimated him very quickly, didn't he? He was very impressive.
He done very, very well. His hands are just incredible.
He beat Adam Proctor.
That's right, yeah. And he just presses the pressure. He just pushes onto you, and he makes you make mistakes.
And I think referring back to Adesanya, you know, going up a weight, will people walk through his shots, etc. If you know, look at Mason Jones and what he did to Adam Proctor, maybe, you know, it is possible to go up a weight and still pour on that pressure and still dominate that fighter, even though you are maybe not as big. But you know, Mason Jones going into UFC next year. Well, he's in fight camp. He's put on social media he's in fight camp. I'd expect a fight to be announced any time between now and the end of January. I cannot wait, because I think he's going to be fast tracked. And we've seen a couple of the young guys this year really get given big opportunities. And I mean, you know, Chimaev, he fought John Phillips in his first fight, which is no easy feat. Destroyed him, and then fought the next week, destroyed Rhys Mckee, and then moved on again. And he fought, I think, you know, Chimaev was so active this year and so impressive. Modestus had a phenomenal, big fight in only his second fight in the UFC. So they are given those opportunities if they arise with, whether it's injuries or withdrawals. They are giving these young guys these opportunities to have a go at maybe a fight that they wouldn't have got necessarily.
Sure.
They wouldn't necessarily have put him in there that early.
Yeah, I think some of these opportunities are being arisen. It's one of the advantages of this COVID situation. You're getting many a fighter not able to make their actual fight date because of a COVID infection, not even with themselves, but with a team member. And it puts them out of commission for the fight on reasonably short notice. So these youngsters, they're always in training, they're always fight fit, and they're ready to take these short-term options and jump in there and take place of these other fighters to step up. And yeah, so that's a benefit for them, I guess, one of the small benefits that you get from this whole COVID thing. But yeah, you're right. Yeah, Desta's had his opportunity. He had a good win on his first fight, and really made a massive step up in competition in fighting that Crute. But yeah, he fell a little short on this one. But he'd be up and back at it in 2021. But it's been overly a good year for him. He became
absolutely
Cage Warriors light heavyweight champion. He had some amazing performances and went on to UFC, got his first win. Okay, lost on that second one, but still been a damn good year. He should be smiling, looking back and reflecting over 2020.
Absolutely, he should be very excited about what's to come because Jimmy Crute is a phenomenally difficult fighter to face, and there's nothing to be ashamed of whatsoever in losing to someone of that ilk. At the end of the show, me and Danny are going to give out a couple of Danny Batten Fight Show awards. We're going to give our Fight of the Year, Fighter of the Year, Breakout Star of the Year, or who we're most excited to see where they go in 2021. And also we're going to worst year. So who's had the worst year, basically. We don't want to say worst fighter of the year because I don't believe that's accurate. It's just who's had the worst year. But one guy who's going to be up there, mate, for breakout star or prospect is going to be Chimaev. He's been very active. He could arguably be up for fighter of the year, really. He's been very, very active during his short run in the UFC in the COVID era. He began in July, where he fought John Phillips, and John Phillips took that fight on short notice. He beat John Phillips fairly handily. 10 days later, he faced Rhys Mckee. That was over real quick via a TKO. He had Performance of the Night's Glow. Then he beat Gerhard Meerschaert, who, again, that's not an easy fight for someone who's 2 fights into their UFC career. Again, Performance of the Night, knocked him out in 17 seconds. Then he was scheduled to fight Leon Edwards, so that would have been his 4th fight. The fight with Edwards was supposed to be December the 19th. That would have been his first fight of the year. Unfortunately, he tested positive for COVID, so that was out. But it is being rescheduled, and it's now on January 20th, I think, off the top of my head. What's your opinion of Chimaev? His impact? He's been very active, haven't he?
Yeah, I mean, his impact has been a lot of the hype in what he's done, and he has done fantastic. He's got people out in the fights very, very quickly, and he was very, very active from the time that he stepped his first foot in the UFC door. But I think he's still largely untested. Not to take anything away from those performances, they are super great, but I don't think you could really say he's the fighter of the year. I just think there's other fighters that have achieved more than he has. But he has done fantastically well. I just think there's a lot of hype around him, and not to say he can't live up to that hype, but before he can be contested as someone that's a fighter of the year, I think that might come in 2021 if he carries on his dominance up into the top 5 ranks, sort of thing. So yeah, to me, there's a few question marks. So he's 9-0, which is a fantastic record, but there's other people with twice that. We just spoke about Israel Adesanya. He's like 20-0, and you got people like Jones who are 26-1. But that loss that he had was a disqualification for downward elbows or something. That was against. Was that against? That was at Matt Hillman or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, someone really random.
Something like that. Yeah, but So
the other thing is,
he's largely unbeaten.
Chimaev, I know what you mean. Let's be clear. Chimaev has got the full backing of the UFC promotional machine. They are all aboard the hype train for him. And
Yeah.
you know, like John Phillips, with all due respect to John, he's a great fighter to watch. He's very exciting to watch. Hasn't really worked out for him in the UFC in terms of really pushing on to challenge the rankings. You know, Rhys Mckee took a fight on short notice. It was his first ever fight in the UFC. He's a young guy, so that was very, very difficult for him at welterweight. And then, you know, Gerhard Meerschaert, you know, is he a journeyman really, like a gateway fighter? Like, I don't want to be disrespectful to him, but he's not. He didn't challenge.
On paper he should have challenged more than he did, but I think he kind of got caught up into the hype as well. He looked like he was fighting scared, and really for me underperformed completely.
In the if you remember in the build up to that, Dan Chimaev was saying how he was going to knock him out to be different to his previous two fights. And I think Gerhard got a bit caught up in that because he was almost pulling back a bit, and he did get knocked out. But
he backpedaled. He's up against the fence in no time, and and
Leon Edwards is the one made for that. You know, that is the challenge for him, isn't it? That's his first real challenge.
Let's look at Leon Edwards. He never even got a fight in 2020. I feel absolutely sorry for this guy. But his record's fantastic. It was an 18-3 record. The last time he had lost was back in like 2014 against that Claudio Silva. You know, that's a 6 years reign that he's had. You know, getting wins against good level guys. What is that, like an 8 winning streak, 4 years streak of getting wins? I mean, that's pretty damn impressive, and that don't get spoke about nowhere near enough. And you're right when you talk about the UFC being on that train to promoting people. They've definitely done it and more for Chemiev. But Leon Edwards, I felt like he was just put in the shadows, and I don't know why, because he's an exciting fighter as well. He'll take it to you. You know, he's not going to play it safe. He gets in there and he's throwing bombs. He's there to win every minute of every round. So I'm kind of gutted, really, because the only way you can include him in any talk for 2020 is the fight that he should have but didn't have, and he never got a fight for any of the previous year. So it makes it difficult. The early part of the year,
difficult. Didn't get that activity. There's some guys who just had some phenomenal years. Before we go into some of those guys and girls who just had great years in the UFC, I want to talk about the Cage Warriors events which we witnessed. Obviously, we watched 2 trilogies, and we saw the show just before the lockdown, the first lockdown. So that first show before the lockdown, we saw Mason Jones crowned as what weight was that? The first title.
He was lightweight, then welterweight champion.
That's it. So he became lightweight champion at that first Cage Warriors show in Manchester. And it was relocated, wasn't it, at the last minute to be able to be kept on the Cage Warriors 113. And if you remember, that it was a phenomenal show. It was so good. All the fights were good. Obviously, the focus was on Mason Jones, but we also saw Paddy the Baddy fight and win. He got a TKO in the first round of that bout, but then he obviously had an injury. Conor Hignett came back with that massive KO. And there was another fight, if I remember correctly, which we really enjoyed. So Paddy Pimblett beat Decky Dalton. Mason defeated Joe McColgan to win the title. And then even in the prelims, we saw Perry Goodwin defeated Steve Amiable on a decision, which was a really good fight. Adam Armasinger, we've talked about him. Impressive. I think he's had a phenomenal year.
He has done very, very well.
And also Aidan Stephen, another one who deserves a lot of credit for the year he's just had. And Kingsley Crawford, we discussed him last week with Ben. Obviously, he wasn't happy with some of his antics, should we say. He was very impressive in that first Cage Warriors show. On the pro prelims, he beat Lewis Monarch via a triangle choke. But that I remember being really impressed, because at that time, the UFC had cancelled UFC London. there was boxing and Bellator. Everything was getting cancelled. Football, it was all going off, and everyone was kind of panicking almost, wasn't there? Is that there was no toilet roll, there was nothing in the shops. It was terrible. So yeah, then we had a bit of a break then, mate. After the Cage Warriors 113, there was no nutting for about 2.5, 3 months. So you and myself, we had to come up with a plan. And obviously this is episode number 55. The show's changed from that first episode. That first episode, me and you didn't really know each other that well. We'd done the one show before. We'd had a chat on the phone and texting back and forth. We were finding our feet, but I feel like even I look back at that first show, like the graphics were all different, the logo was different. I feel like it looks it's all a bit more professional now, and it looks a bit sharper, and it's grown. I feel it's better than ever. I got to say, I think we've had some phenomenal guests throughout 2020. Obviously, up until there, so we got to the sort of the first lockdown, I feel like we were just sort of reviewing the UFC shows and maybe talking a bit about some other stuff. We changed it up then. After lockdown, we started having regular guests. I feel like there's not many names within UK MMA bigger than the names we've got on. We had some top guys. We've had guys from UFC. We've had guys from Bellator. We've had guys from Cage Warriors. We've had boxing promoters. There's all sorts of different. We've had journalists on, of course. James Lynch came on. We've had just phenomenal guests, and I feel like they've all contributed a lot. Every show, they haven't just kind of sat there and just waited for their turn to talk. They've all just joined in. They've given their opinion. And I got to say, some of the guests, I think they've all been phenomenal, by the way. There's not one guest that we've had on this show where I thought afterwards, I don't know how that's going to turn out. And I feel like there's some which I really, really enjoyed. Ben Ellis, when Ben Ellis came on, I'd only spoken to him via text and stuff. Mason had kind of said, give him a nod and said, come on the show. He agreed straight away. He came on. Great lad. And God, does he know his MMA? He watches everything, boxing, MMA. Every Saturday he watches everything. And when when it was his turn to give his analysis, I kind of sat back. I was like, wow. He's, all fighters know the ins and outs of the technical stuff because it's their job. But he was very, very good at verbalising it, I felt like. So he stood out for me. I also thought, I think Mason's Mason's a very charismatic guy, and he makes you want to listen to him. But then Richard Shaw, such a knowledgeable guy like yourself, and I really love doing those shows. For me, as an MMA kind of fan, listening to you and Richard Shaw break down these fights, it's like two godfathers of MMA for me, and I love it. It's just a real pleasure and treat for me. Jack Shaw is one of the nicest people I've ever spoken to and dealt with. What a gentleman.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to remember as well, these people ain't getting anything for it. They're doing it out of the pure love for the sport and doing it because we've got good relations with them. And, we're really thankful to have them on. And
100%, mate.
Give up some of their Saturday, because I know it gets put out, doesn't it, on a Wednesday, but we're doing this on a Sunday evening, which is a typical family day, and they're giving up an hour and a half, sometimes nearly 2 hours, isn't it? Sometimes,
and they got to watch all the fights, and
that's right.
They do their best to do that. Did any of the guests kind of surprise you?
Some of the just the younger fighters that are relevant today, that just surprised me how mature they are in their outlook to their training. So not even about how they were breaking down the fights, although that was impressive in itself, but just the way they have their outlook on their careers. It's really with mature head on their shoulders. But a lot of that comes from who's coaching them. And you've already spoke about Richard Shaw. I mean, Jack Shaw's got his attitude, which is proving winning time again, because of the influence that his father has on him, both as a father and as a coach and advisor. clearly they're doing something that works, and you get a sense of that when you're talking with people like Richard Shaw. Someone that's really, how can I say, puts his information over in a very analytical, very calm way. You just know that guy's clued up, and you get a sense of why that team is having the huge successes that they are having. Okay, it's not just one coming from their team succeeding. It's not just a standout because the kids a natural talent. They're getting standouts time and time again, which goes there's something behind the coaching and how he's structuring and putting together his team. And that comes from a smart, mature individual, and you're seeing that in every aspect in Richard Shaw.
Yeah, 100%. I think we've had Richard on, we had Jack on, we had Josh Crazy Horse Reed on, who works under Richard Brett Johns as well. I've had Oban on some other stuff, and he'd done a couple of interviews with me ahead of his Cage Warrior stuff. He is going to be coming on this show as well. He's keen to do it. It's just working into his schedule. And he's another one who's phenomenally charismatic guy, very confident, but he's one of those people you want to listen to and you want to speak to, sure, because he's just got that aura around him. But then, the Matt Academy guys under Lewis Long, we had Mason on, we had Ben Ellis, we had Aaron Khalid, all guys who they're the way they broke down the fights, the way they talk about, like you said, about their training. I think that's tremendous credit to Lewis Long and all the other coaches there, and even Lewis and himself. I thought he was a really funny guy, just a really likable guy as well. Phenomenal guest. It was really really good stuff. And then yourself, we had all the BST guys on as well. Yeah, sure. Yeah, we have, and obviously it gets a little bit more relaxed again because they're people that I bounce off on a daily basis. But it's the contrast as well in people. Look at someone like Sam Creasy, so lightly spoken. Really gentle-natured guy, but trust me, this guy, he can fight. But you don't get no sense of him being a fighter when you're just chatting with him. Talk for talk. Such an unassuming cool guy. Very. And really I'm lucky enough to get to train with him. I get him come down the BST, and I think I said before that I train his younger brother. Predominantly full time compared to where he's going to other gyms. So, and they're both very, very, well put over individuals, I suppose is a way of putting it. But then you got the contrast of moods. Now, someone else that I know very, very well is Luke Shanks. As you know, I trained him for many years before he made the move up north to Scotland and trains under James Doolan, another fantastic coach that I have a lot of respect for as a fighter and a coach. Oh yeah, James.
That's already. I penciled that in, and he seemed keen to do so. He does his own podcast that's really successful as well. But he's keen to come on, so I'm looking forward for that for 2021. That can be arranged, possibly as early as January or February for that one. But Luke, when we had him on, now normally I know Luke. Luke's he likes to horseplay. He's always prattling about, but because that fight was coming up, we had a very serious version of Luke Shanks, and and that was strange because I saw a side to him that's developed since I was training him. It's been a couple of years now up in Scotland, and he's taken his fight career a whole lot more serious than he did when he was training with us. He's really chasing that UFC. Missed out on it a little bit this time because he won the title, didn't he? And then he unfortunately lost it to incredible performance by Hadley. Absolutely incredible performance.
I don't think it's going to caught up in his emotions a bit with the dislike of Jake.
Again, going to that personality, you get a sense of that. He was up for a street fight almost when we were talking to him. He really took it.
Not happy, was he?
He took it personally rather than professionally, I would say. And this is something that Luke will definitely have to learn from. I think he knows where he went wrong with it. He knows what he has to put right, and that is his attitude towards these fights where people are going to try and get under your skin a little bit. And this guy got under his skin, and he treated it like a street fight. He just ran over to him, and he got himself taken down time again. But to go back to my point is, look at the diversity of approaches when we're having them on the podcast. You get all sorts of different personalities, but the beauty of it is that our interest is all the same. It's a podcast about MMA and these combat sports, and that brings us all together no matter what the personality differences are.
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, when you were in, we've had the Mearns brothers on, Tom and Richard. We've had Jordan Vucinic on, the Modestas on, all train under you. And obviously, when you were in Fight Island, I was in a bit of a pickle. Not a pickle, but I obviously had to find someone to step in. I didn't want to not cover it, particularly because your fighters were involved as well. So we did a live show because at that point UFC was doing Wednesday and Saturday shows. So we had Canadian MMA journalist James Lynch, which I got to say, James is not only one of the best MMA journalists in the world, he's a phenomenally nice guy. Look, this guy works for some of the biggest TV channels in America or North America, Canada. Like, he is the real deal. If you go on his social media, he's like the list of people that he works with as a freelance guy is. You're talking, ESPNs and The Score and proper top of the range broadcasting companies and things like this. He interviews the very top fighters in the world on a weekly basis. So for him to give up his time, give up like an hour and a half of his time, he's also got young children, on a Sunday evening, which would have been a Sunday morning for him, I think it was, because of his time zone. He came on with Richard Mearns. We covered the show, and I tell you, I was in awe of just how good he is for someone who's not got, he's got no fight experience. He's just a journalist who's covered it for many years. Really, really impressive. And to top it off, just one of those people who you are just in awe of, because they are just, when someone is so genuine and so just a good human being, you almost want to be around them. He gives me that vibe a lot, and I speak to him semi-regularly. He's coming back on the show, and then you made a great point, mate, not long ago, that none of these guys get anything out of it. We don't pay guests. They give up their time out of their own schedules, their own free will. We are very blessed to have some contacts between the two of us to be able to speak to these people, and you could sometimes get someone else to put you in contact with whoever. Jordan, obviously, who fights under you, Jordan Vucinic. Go back to James Lynch. I'm really looking forward to doing the show with you and him, because obviously you missed out on that one because you were away.
Yeah, I did. Yeah,
and I think you two will get on really well. He knows who you are. He's very knowledgeable about MMA as a worldwide sport, and I think that'll be real interesting. I'd be really interested to see, the interactions between the two of you. It's going to be a good one. So he's coming back on. We've got an MMA commentator coming on. We've got more Cage Warriors fighters coming on. In talks with a couple of other fighters from Bellator and UFC. I know you've been sniffing about some people as well. I can announce now that Jack Stone Mason is coming on, because I've already agreed the date and stuff with him with that. So I'm really excited with that. And I'm really excited, we'll have probably, I'd say, 80% of the guests who we've just mentioned and had on this year. I'd say 80% of them will also come back on next year, partially because they enjoy it. We enjoy having them on. It's just very enjoyable. What was I don't want to say your favourite guest, because that, it's putting you on the spot a bit, but when you look back at all the different shows we've done with all the different guests particularly, is there one show which kind of sticks out for you and you really enjoyed? It's not like enjoyed the most.
Well, you mentioned it before. I think it's when we had someone more in my age bracket. So when we had Richard on,
Denniston as well, we had on. I forgot.
Yeah, and Denniston, because they're back from a generation that crossed over with mine, and Richard Shaw was, he started out pretty much as I started out, so he goes way back. And when you talk about Denniston Sutherland, I mean, I'm lucky enough to spend a lot of time with this guy when we're out in Dubai together, and I've had training history with him long ago anyways, so I know what kind of character he was all about. That was great because we get to talk in depth. We we can talk about things back in 1999 and
Yeah, of course.
which is when I was starting my career, and they can relate to that. So I kind of have a slight fonder memory, looking back with those ones, because I had a connection from my roots. But to be honest, I enjoy them all for what they bring, and I've already touched on the diversities of personalities that you come across with it, and that's kind of why I'm in it as well. Not only for the love of MMA, but for the love of people. We really are lucky to get to be exposed to so many different people by bringing them together on this podcast. It really is great. But yeah, I mean, it really is pushing me into trying to commit to one or the other. I would say the ones that I have that connection with that goes way back, I just feel perhaps a little bit more comfortable and at home, feel like I can actually bounce off them a little bit more. But I really truly enjoy doing it with or without guests. Like you say, our friendship's developed. I really enjoy it, hooking up on our Sunday evening. It's become part of my life now. It's part of the routine of my life.
Part of the routine and schedule, isn't it?
It's not work for me. Okay, we have to sit down, we have to research. A lot of people don't realise what you have to put in, and kind of hiccups that we have. When I was on holiday, we had a hell of a lot of trouble, didn't we, with my Wi-Fi connection? It really took quite something to get that done. But of course, you chop it all up and you make it work and make it look smooth. But things ain't always smooth. We have to put a lot of research time in, making notes, studying the fights. So a lot of our Sundays are wiped out. We only put it all together in a presentation for which people listen to and see, whether it's on UFC or just through the audio download. They see the end product, but at the end of the day, a lot of time gets sacrificed. And again, we touched on it with these guests that come on. They're having to give up their Sundays, not just for their evening, but they have to research the fights and get themselves collectively together to show their knowledge, which is what it's all about.
Yeah, they don't want to come on and not have watched the fights, because then they almost feel like if they've got nothing to say because they haven't watched the fights, it becomes a bit awkward and stuff like that. I mean, unless you're Ben Ellis and you watch everything, you've got to you've got to do something on the Saturday or Sunday and watch them and catch up. It's just the way it is. But I mean, like I say, we've already got some phenomenal guests lined up for the next year. We are obviously going to keep going. We're going to keep going, and we'll keep trying to grow. Obviously, the biggest difficulty with any like podcast and video podcasts and things like this is there's kind of two things I think which are the most difficult, and that's reaching guests who you don't have some sort of contact line with, whether it's through someone else or through yourself. It's very difficult to get the attention of someone to invite them to come on, and also is finding new people, new eyes, new ears to listen to your show. There is so much content out there and podcasts out there, so you've got to just believe in what you're doing. And I very much believe in Ace Podcast Nation as a channel. It's grown massively in this, particularly in the last 6 months. Everything's gone up, which is it's fantastic. It's not where I want it to be at the moment, but it will be, and I believe fully in that. And at the end of the day, the basis for that channel was there's various series and stuff which drop, and I have different guests and different focuses. The backbone of this channel is the football and the MMA shows. They are the flagship shows of the channel. They are out week in, week out. They're the ones which are there every week, and I think that shows in the numbers. Like in the early days of our show, we'd have sort of solid numbers, and then the odd show would kind of spike, but then it would drop back down. But just in those last 6 months, they've either kept creeping up or staying the same, or they haven't gone down, which is obviously the main thing. So we had a question sent in. We'll go back to the 2020 review, but it kind of fits in with what we've been talking about. So we had a question sent in by Gaz. He asked, what are our plans, visions, ambitions for 2021 with the Danny Batten Fight Show? Which I thought was a very interesting question. So what I'll do is we'll start first. I'll ask you this, Danny. In the perfect world, like the perfect world, the absolute ideal, where would you like to see the Danny Batten Fight Show?
Well, obviously, I want to see it continue to grow in its interest of having regular listeners. That's what it's all about. We want to see that expansion, but it'd be great to get some form of sponsorship. I know this is something that, things that are potentially in the pipeline, but we can't say no more than that. But that would be fantastic to get sponsorship, and also keeping the influx of new guests coming in, as well as keeping the guests that we got. Because the nice thing for the listeners is that, they get to see a different side of people other than what they see when they fight and compete, or when just the coaching aspect. They actually getting to meet these people effectively, indirectly through the podcast, and getting a sense of their personality. And each time that they do come on, they're going to build up a little personal portfolio of how they see that person, that character. And again, when you get these new people come in, hopefully you get some kind of regulator with those. So you've got to both have the base where you get people on a semi-regular basis, and as that personality develops throughout the year, you will add to that with some from fresh meat, so to speak, which we got plans for early part of 2021. But yeah, I mean, that's initially how I see it. I want to continue having fun and continue enjoying it, for which I have done immensely over this past year. And I'm hoping that that's going to be amplified for 2021, because we're all a lot more relaxed with this. People might not realise how, until they maybe come on to be part of a podcast, how at first, how stiff it makes you, and how awkward it can be a little bit at first, and how you feel watched or feel specifically listened to, which you are. But yeah, it can make you clam up somewhat. But we're both much more relaxed now. I mean, you're doing a lot more podcasting, obviously, than I am. We're just doing our one that we're doing together. You do your football. You've done your series on conspiracies as well. So you're obviously becoming well versed in the whole experience
it's like a
having
full-time
eyes
job
and ears
for
on
me.
you.
It's non-stop.
Exactly. But I feel a lot more relaxed now. We've been doing it for, 55 episodes, you said?
Yeah.
And, feeling my groove with it all, I suppose you would say.
Yeah, I think, like, in an ideal, perfect world, what I would love to be able to do is to take this show to, like, a radio station or something like that, where we could do it, say, every Sunday night live, and kind of get together or do it remotely or whatever, and be paid for it. That would be fantastic. That would be like the perfect world. However, I say that, I very much like, the thing I like about independent podcasting is I've got the Danny Batten Fight Show and all the other shows under the Ace Podcast Nation banner. So myself, I make the final decisions alongside, for this show, it's me and you. With Andy, with the football show, it's me, it's like a 50-50 thing. We make the decisions, we decide what direction we want to take it. Nobody is telling us, you need to do this, you need to say that. We give honest opinions on everything we talk about. And I pride myself on that sometimes we might even be critical of someone who we have on in the future or have had on because of, nothing personal. Just we're giving an opinion on a fight, whatever it may be. And that's one of the things I'm very, very proud of for this show, is that we give honest opinions no matter what. But obviously that the radio station, that's almost like a pipe dream. That's not necessarily the aim. That would just be a perfect world. Ultimately, I agree with you. I'd like to get a regular sponsor. On the football show, we've got a sponsor who signed up for a year. I would love to do that for this. Get someone signed in for a year, brand up and partnership, because I think long term we're growing all the time. We can help a brand or every partnership with someone. And, I'd like to earn some money. I spend a lot of time doing these podcasts, so it'd be nice for that time and effort to be recognised financially as well. But any money which we do get, so like obviously, for instance, with the live shows for football, if you can get YouTube, people send super chats, or if we've got the sponsorship, that gets split 50-50 between me and Andy, and that's it. And that, that'll be the same for this. Anything we get goes between us, and that's the aim. But ultimately, one thing I would really like to do, when the COVID stuff's out the way, I would like to come up to Northampton, or you come down to Cardiff, and kind of do a show in person, sat next to each other, because I think that in itself creates we've got like a good rapport and stuff. But I think in person, again, it creates a different rapport, and I think a better rapport, because you haven't got the technological issues, you haven't got the slight delay and things like that. When you're in a room with someone, it's very different, isn't it? So I just looked, Northampton to Cardiff, it's under 3 hours drive. So I mean, I'd like to make that happen.
Yeah. And
I could come up to you and we could film it in the BST, or we could sort something out.
Sure, I spend a lot of my life travelling, whether it's by plane or by car. I clock up a lot of miles, travelling here, there, and everywhere. I quite enjoy travelling, so I've got no issue coming up with you and doing one side by side. But remember, for a bet, I've actually done one of these podcasts without no trousers or pants on.
Yeah,
so,
I know.
You want to hope I don't get proposition, because I'll come and do that sat next to you.
Yeah, I don't want to be sat next to half naked Danny Batten. But yeah, so thanks for the question, guys. I do appreciate that. Ultimately, the answer is we want to keep growing, keep bringing in new eyes and ears, keep bringing on new guests, and keep doing what we're doing, and just keep getting better at it, I suppose. But ultimately, we can't, as much as we enjoy this and it's fun, we can't do it without the people watching and listening and the viewers' support. And particularly, when we were doing those retro shows. So going back to where we were, Cage Warriors 113, lockdown happened. We had to do something different because we had no fights to talk about. So we came up with the decision, right, we'll do some kind of retro reviews. We'll start with UFC 1 and we'll just work through them, and we'll get the viewers to send in an MMA or a boxing fight each week, and we'll watch that as well, and we'll talk about it, we'll answer some questions. And as much as I love covering the live stuff each Sunday, that was so much fun watching all those old shows, having people send in like fights and stuff. That it was just so enjoyable. What was your favourite retro show, mate?
Oh man, it's hard to say, because the very first ones were just shocking. How I don't want to say bad, but how else can you say it?
Really bad.
The lack of know-how how to be an MMAist. I mean, people wasn't. There was either a wrestler, there was a jiu-jitsu guy, or there was a striker in some form. It was only as you started to reach the ones that we had reached that you started seeing anyone with a bit of skill in each of those areas, but still the holes in their game were huge. And so I think sometimes when I was looking back, I was like dumbfounded how terrible it really was. I'm like, wow, things have changed so much. But not only have they changed because the level and the knowledge of this new sport's grown, but also you've got to remember the rules have changed somewhat as well. So, people was unable to settle into just the fact that it was bare knuckle, because eventually that got taken out, and people couldn't strategize for a potential fight that could go on for an unlimited amount of time, because they started bringing in time limits, and then rounds were introduced. There has been many changes, and in recent times they've changed the ruling on how you class a grounded opponent, and that for a little while was depicted on different states that you were fighting in. So in one it was like the old way, and in another state it's like the new way. So things are still evolving in that front. But when we talk about how we can move forward with the podcast, I think what would be a great idea is to get different perspectives from different seated positions. So we've got coaches' perspective on things and fighters' perspective on things. Wouldn't it be great to get a referee's perspective and also a commentator's perspective of things? That would be fantastic. A judge's perspective of things. I think people don't realise how difficult being a judge is. Always say a referee's job is much more hard, because at the scrutiny of all the fans and the people watching. But commentators, I mean, that'd be great as well. And judges, wow, I would love to know how they see things and what their viewpoint was. And it'd be a great education for the listeners too, because they're kind of like, they're in the shadows that no one really knows. They don't get a lot of airtime, do they? But it'd be great to do so.
Yeah, 100%. I'm really looking forward to getting like those different outlooks on everything throughout the year. So. And we also got to watch some great boxing bouts during that little period where we were doing those retro reviews. We did the Bruno and
Tyson, was it?
Bruno and Tyson. We did Lennox Lewis fights. We watched some really exciting classic boxing, which was Lewis versus Bruno. We watched, which was a good one. And we just kind of went through the old UFCs. We watched we did the Royce Gracie versus Sakuraba kind of feuds, didn't we? And we watched all their fights from Pride, I think, isn't it? Was it Pride? Yeah.
Yeah, they combated in Pride, and that's
But they were all cool,
So fond of looking back at that. But again, even looking back to then, the mistakes, or what would be classed as mistakes today, they weren't mistakes back then because no one knew how to capitalise on certain things that Sakuraba was doing. He was very much out of the box, but because he was out of the box in his approach and doing things that other fighters had never seen before, no one knew how to react to him, and he turned it to his advantage. But you couldn't get away with the things he was doing. I mean, he was giving up his back standing to create opportunities, and look, giving up his back standing is what led to Renzo Gracie having his arm. I don't know whether it broke, but it certainly got dislocated. I don't know whether it's a break as well, but he messed up his arm. And it just amazed me how Renzo Gracie was a little confused why he wasn't allowed to carry on. But Renzo Gracie, great fighter over the years. I really enjoyed looking back at him. But again, a very largely incomplete fighter to the skill sets that you see today. We really are spoilt with some incredible athletes today. But it's the eras. It's you can't really compare the greatest fighter of the 1990s or even in the millennium. Things have advanced so much more on, and I've already stated before, back when I was a world champion in 2004, 2005, I had the title for a good number of years. I wouldn't be able to compete as I was then against the top level pros in the weight division. I'm sure they would be running me close, if not beating me. That goes to show how things have advanced just in those 15 years, particularly on the UK scene.
Yeah, 100%. And it's, the best fighters in 1990 wouldn't touch the best fighters as they were now. It's just
you
because the fight, to be in the UFC now, for instance, you have to be an all-round fighter. You have to be able to do everything. And of course, there's fighters who are better at certain things, but you have to be an all-round fighter, and that just wasn't there. And you mentioned Renzo Gracie, when it comes to BJJ, the Gracies are untouchable, but they did get found out when other fighters learned how to defend, not become particularly great at grappling and things like that, but just when they were able to defend it, and the Gracies maybe had to put up with some more strikes against them, and the technical side of the other fighters striking improved, you did see them start to lose fights. Whereas in that first few UFC shows, it was like Royce Gracie just rattled through everyone. And funny enough, one of my favourite shows that we did was it was episode number 16, and in that show we covered UFC 4. And we watched Joe Calzaghe versus Bernard Hopkins, and we did the Renzo Gracie versus Sakuraba from Pride 10. And it was such a good time watching those shows. And me and you, we talked for a good 2 hours about this, like, retro content, nothing new, new news. It was just like a real love of just watching combat sports. And it's really one of my favourite shows. And the other thing is, like, when lockdown came around, we were just getting it, like, we were just finding our feet as a podcast. We were starting to, gain viewers and listeners, and then all of a sudden it was like, right, there's no MMA and boxing, so we had to change it up. I think it was like around episode number 10, which is so early into what we were trying to do and build. So episode 10, we talked Cage Warriors and some other bits and pieces, and then after that, you're kind of into the retro reviews. I think the next show or two. So we had to adapt, and I feel that we did a pretty good job. Like, we had to be a bit creative, but I like to be challenged and to kind of, we could have just kind of binned it off and said, right, we won't do any until September or whenever the fights come back, but we didn't know how long that was going to be. So I do like the fact that we adapted rather than just waited for the for everything to start back up.
Yeah, and we changed the way we've done things as well, but not because we sat down and made the specific change. I think it just began to happen, and then we spoke about it, and then eventually the changes was made. But we used to do the fights round by round. But
yes,
it was a slow going way about it, and we decided to review the fight and just pick out a round if anything specific happened. And so we learnt to, overview
condenses
the fights
it a bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you can skim over it and just pick out the points more detailed. I think because we were being so detailed about it made it harder actually as well to try and prepare for it,
because you got notes and notes
so many
and notes and notes.
Yeah, that's right, and you don't have to relay it. I think if you was doing it live and people are only listening, okay, you could do it punch for punch, kick for kick, takedown for takedown, etc. But I think doing it the way we do it now, I think was a natural evolutionary process of making things run a little bit smoother. And there will probably be more that we haven't forecast as an idea of change yet, but we will in the near future, I'm sure. So we will adapt and we will be making changes naturally.
Yeah, the show will evolve, and if you only have to look at the visual aspect of the first show compared to now, I've changed the software I use and different things like that, different graphics, different logo. We had a fantastic new logo, which I really love, which you can see behind me, behind my head. And also, the other aspect is going back to that question from Gaz, one thing I think I would like to do, perhaps next year, maybe the middle part of next year, but at some point, is I think I'd like to go live, like I do with the football shows, because having that audience interaction as you're going through and doing the show and talking about the fights with a guest, and they can ask questions. The viewers can give their opinions on fights and fighters, and they can ask the guest question. It adds a whole new dynamic to it, and that is something which I would like to do. But ultimately, to do that, there's got to be that live audience there, and it's picking the right night to do it. So, I think a Sunday, just doing it when we do it normally, but doing it live is probably the best slot for that. But what that does then is it changes the schedule, because obviously everyone's used to it coming out on a Wednesday. But, it's like you say, we'll evolve and we'll go as we go. So after the lockdown, we had the first trilogy event, which was Cage Warriors 114, 115, and 116. We saw Luke Shanks give one of the most one-sided 5-round fights I think I've ever seen. We saw Aaron Khalid knock out someone in a very special way. Jordan didn't fight on the first trilogy, did he? It was the second trilogy, I think. Jordan fought on. But we saw some Cage Warriors. Just to kind of gloss over it, Cage Warriors put on some phenomenal fights this year. Jake Hadley is one of the standout fighters of the year for me in any promotion. What he's done has been massively impressive. It's been a phenomenal year for Cage Warriors. I think I said last week they deserve so much credit for what they've done this year. Paul Hughes has looked phenomenal. He beat his fight with Aiden Stephen at Cage Warriors, 116. So on that card, you had Mason Jones beat Adam Proctor to be the welterweight champion, 2-weight champion, which was obviously a massive moment. You had Paul Hughes defeated Aiden Stephen via submission in the third round of a fight. And I'll tell you what, that's a fight that you should go and seek out and watch if you're a fan of MMA. And Paul Hughes he's a favourite of Cage Warriors, shall we say. They love him. We saw him go on to face Jordan Vucinic in the next trilogy. But in this trilogy, Vucinic beat Steve Amiable on a split decision. I think he won that. There was no doubt. We saw Sam Creasy return after a bit of a layoff. It was Cage Warriors. I thought the standard of fights in Cage Warriors this year was phenomenal. And there was a couple of fights which I'd have actually up in my Fight of the Year candidates, including Jordan versus Paul Hughes. That was on my shortlist for Fight of the Year. Wrap up Cage Warriors in a nice little bow for me, mate, for 2020.
Yeah, I mean, come on. We've had a really difficult year with the lockdown and the whole COVID situation. This has been real well versed over our time doing the podcast. But my God, UFC, and then more closer to home, Cage Warriors really have pulled it out the bag, not only for regular shows, but how they put on these trilogies. I mean, that's just so impressive to do. I mean, one show under the difficult circumstances of how things are now, being so different, is difficult to organise, but to do them back to back on a Thursday, Friday, then a Saturday night, that is just massively impressive and hugely valuable and appreciated for fans and us as podcasters. You know, it really has been amazing. Yeah, they've done a damn good job. And what people must understand is that Cage Warriors is a true world-class event. You know, you get Cage Warriors champion, they go over to UFC. They don't go over to UFC to not make an impression. They make impression. They go out there and they start winning. You know, it's a proper world stage, Cage Warriors, and we're really, really lucky to have it so close to home.
100%, mate. So before we go into our little awards or what our opinions are for the end of the year kind of things, I'm going to throw some names at you from the UFC. I just want you to maybe talk about their years a little bit and how you think they performed or what they've done. So we're going to start off with, let's have a look. Put you on the spot now. Israel Adesanya. Tell me about his 2020 and what you think has it been good, bad, or indifferent?
Well, he's been practically faultless. He really has. We haven't seen him under pressure, but that's not because the opponents he's been facing haven't been good enough to potentially do so. I just think he's created a style that's truly hard to beat and no one can figure out in 3 rounds or 5 rounds. So he's so hugely unchallenged. He's stepping up a weight. I mean, that just says something. And not only his unbeaten record says something, which is so hard to do in today's climate of the skill level. I mean, the divisions really are quite deep. And he shone. He's shone upon shone, and now stepping up a weight. That truly is incredible. He's had a fantastic year. And, what can I say? I just can't wait to see what 2021 brings. We're seeing him step up, and I'm not too sure. I'm convinced that he's going to be successful in that height and weight division, but I would not be surprised if he proves otherwise, because he's proved me wrong numerous times throughout the year where I thought he'd get tested and he just hasn't. It seems that each fighter that seemed to be the one to push him, he seems to have done a more convincing job.
Yeah, 100%. So next up is Charles Oliveira. Began his year beating Kevin Lee in the main event of UFC Fight Night 170. Finished the year on December the 12th when he beat Tony Ferguson by a unanimous decision. He also faced a couple of Beneil Dariush in October.
He started out as featherweight, didn't he? I think
he was a featherweight who then went to lightweight, wasn't he? Or was it the other way around?
I think that's right. Yeah. And I think going up a weight has looked really good for him. Yes. I just think he's started to really come together in UFC in his last few fights. I think he was a work in progress in his early introduction to the UFC, and I just think he's become more convincing as time goes. Look, you see some fighters that stay the same. They're there or thereabouts, and that's all you kind of get the sense of. They win some and then they lose some, which is for most of the fighters in UFC, but you get the odd standout who starts to grow and surprise you. Now, sometimes when we're doing our predictions, I'll be doing it on their based previous performances, and then they start fighting out of their skin, and they've introduced new skills. Ortega was one of them. He come out just looking better than ever. He's striking had clearly made huge advances. Incredible. Mackenzie Dern with her last performance showing that she's clearly learning her striking. These athletes are not only great fighters at any one moment that as soon as they step foot in the UFC, but some of them continue to improve at quite a pace, and Charles is one of those such fighters that to me has made clear improvements in his game.
Yeah, 100%. Next up, I've got for you, it's an interesting one. So Glover Teixeira. Glover Teixeira was on a he was 2-3 from 2016 to 18, and I think you'd be hard pressed to think anyone would think that in 2020 he was going to make an impact at the age of 41. But he extended his current win streak to 5 finishes, with finishes of Anthony Smith and Thiago Santos. and I think he's probably looking around for a title shot at some point in 2021 for that light heavyweight.
He's actually
if they can fit him in.
Exactly. He's in a very difficult situation
41.
because 41 years old, Father Time is going to be tapping on his shoulder, but hasn't he just done well? I really do love watching this guy fight. He can strike somewhat, and we know his grappling is very, very good. But this guy, if you've seen a pattern in his fights, when he gets hurt, he always finds a way around it. He can get rocked on the feet. He manages to always get it to the mat. He's always able to change the rhythm of the fight to make it suit him and pull off a win. He really has done fantastically well, and I think he's learned to adapt his game, because age has to be a factor somewhere down the line. His cardio can't be as good as it was a decade ago or more, so he's obviously adapting. In the gym, he's clearly sparring plenty, because some fighters they barely spar as they get older. You know, you just end up sparring less. But clearly he's in there with these youngsters and advancing his game and trying to make that age fit in the modern climate of MMA and still making it work. It's to behold. I respect anyone that can still compete and be relevant in their early 40s. It's amazing that they do so.
Yeah, he's an impressive dude, and we used that word a minute ago when we were talking about the podcast, like evolving. His fight IQ, which is something we talk about a lot, I think is phenomenal. And obviously he's a very experienced chap, but to when he's got a problem during a fight, you know, he'll find a way. Next up, I've got Brandon Moreno, and this is a really interesting one, because he was cut in the UFC in 2018. Towards the end of 2018, he made his return in 2019 to the UFC. So a bit stop-starty. And then 2020 he's had some unbelievable fights. He had a pair of wins over Jussier Formiga, and Royval, and he had a 5-round draw versus the flyweight champion Davison Figueiredo in December, and he would have made history. You know, he's had an unbelievable year, and I really would be amazed if they don't run that back a third time.
Yeah. He had a sticky spell, didn't he, in 2017, 2018? He had two losses strung together, but the guys looked so impressive. I mean, he always gets these. He's been in wars. He's been in some really difficult fights, and my goodness, hasn't he blossomed? I think he really has started to touch the peak of his career. I think we're going to see some interesting challenges to him, both from other fighters coming up trying to take another shot at that title themselves, and the fact that he wants to have another. I'm not too sure whether they're going to run that title shot back straight away or not.
No,
I think they probably will. Oh, you don't think they will? I wouldn't be surprised if they do. I would like to. I don't like to see things run a second time straight away. I'd like to see him reprove himself, just because there's always fighters coming up the ranks,
especially in that division.
Yeah. But he's done fantastic work, and I didn't think he would perform as well as he did against Figueiredo. Figueiredo's been looking unstoppable, both on the ground and his striking. He just looks totally a complete fighter, and he's a physical, sizable dude as well. Really full package in every sense of the word. And I thought he'd come up a little bit short in practically every area. I thought he'd come up a little bit short in the striking, a little bit short in the wrestling, a little short on the ground, but that wasn't the case. That was a hard fight to judge. I wouldn't want to be a judge on that night. Fantastic fight. And okay, a draw leaves things a little up in the air, like, a draw. No one was the true victor there, but I think he can take a personal victory with that performance, and to know that he is there and quite possibly going to be taking that title at some point in 2021. I believe he can do. I think when he fights Figueiredo the next time around, he'll go in there with that confidence that he knows that he could actually really get that win, which clearly he had that belief anyway with the way he fought. But I think that's going to give him that added little push and that added little bit of confidence to see that Figueiredo is not completely invincible like he has been looking, and that he can be beat. It's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see him in 221.
Yeah, me too. Next up is Valentina Chefchenko. She cleared out that flyweight division. She remains completely unstoppable. She stopped Caitlin Chikagian. She had a decision win over Jennifer Maia. She is the queen of that flyweight division. There are some decent contenders in line for a shot, but she looks set for that super fight versus Amanda Nunes.
Yeah, this is the problem though, is that she's always stepping up a weight to fight Nunes, isn't it?
And I'd love to see her at a catch weight where I think more in Shevchenko's favour.
Yeah, but then there's going to be no titles fought at that. I mean, that's a great one for the fans, but is that going to happen in reality? Well, no, I don't think it will happen. So she's going to keep having to step up a weight each time, and Nunes is a phenomenal in her weight division. They're both queens of each of their divisions, and to try and step up weight at the minute in the women's division, that it's just not been seen before, and I'm not so sure that we'll still see it, because Nunes is just looking more and more unstoppable. She's someone else that is continuing to improve, continuing to look more dominant in all areas, in all aspects of her martial art fighting. Shevchenko's doing the same, but at two different weights. And again, this is what's created so much interest with Adesanya. He's been so dominant in his weight division. Can he make an impact a division up? It's only been seen in certain weight divisions, and there's certain weight divisions where that step up looks a little harder. And right now, and I still think it's going to be a bit too much for her.
Yes.
But where does she go from here? She's sort of done everything that can be done.
Yeah, she's cleared it out. It's mad.
The division's a little shallow, isn't it?
I would love to see her really push Nunes, just for the fact that she's been so impressive in her weight division. It would be great to see her really challenge what is probably the pound for pound the best women's fighter of all time.
Yeah,
it would be great to see her get a good go at it.
Yeah, it's like a football team. Whether you play home and away, statistically, you play better at home. And to me, Shevchenko's always going to be playing away, going up to Nunes' weight division.
For sure.
And so, although my predictions have not been completely correct throughout the year, I would say that she'd come up short again. But it's a fight I definitely want to. Would definitely want to see. I'd want to see that. There's very few fights you want to see for a third time round, but that one I would want to see, because it'll be good. It'll just be good to watch.
Good shout, mate. Next on my list, I had Chimaev, but we've talked about Chimaev, so I'm going to move on to the next one. Is Gilbert Burns, another fighter who he could be right up there with the fighter of the year. Really, he's got a championship belt. It was very impressive over Damian Maia, Tyrone Woodley. He took apart. He got I think just an impressive dude. They call him the Nigerian Nightmare, and I just think he had a phenomenal year. He also, I think, he was due to fight Usman, wasn't he? I think Gilbert Burns, and did he fight Usman? He did, didn't he? So many fights, I get confused. Did he fight Usman? No, he didn't.
No, I don't think he did. Mm-hmm.
But I think that's probably the way they'll go.
Yeah, I mean, he did have a good 2020, but he only fought two times. He fought two times, got two great wins, but against two individuals that are really on the way out. I mean, Damian Maia is not a young man and quite one-dimensional. No. And Tyrone Woodley just pretty much really struggled. I think he's lost his last four in a row, something along those lines, or last three in a row at least. Gunnar Nelson, again, someone that's a little bit one-dimensional.
He's got a 6-fight win streak.
Yeah. So, he has done fantastic. I just want to see him, beat someone who's young and tenacious like he is, and just to make me feel that, okay, this guy's a real deal. Not to say I don't think he's a real deal, I certainly think that, but I think for his own little legacy that he's creating, he has to beat someone perhaps a little bit closer, matching him with age and ability to see that he can fight through adversity.
Next up, I've got Kevin Holland. He took his record to 5-0 with 4 knockouts in bouts of 2020. He beat Anthony Hernandez, Joaquin Buckley, Darren Stewart, Charlie Ontiveros and Jacare Souza. He even picked up 3 Performance of the Night bonuses. He's in the top 10 at 185. Got a black belt in jiu-jitsu as well, just to top it off. Everyone else has had a shite year, but it sounds like Kevin Holland had a phenomenal one.
Yeah, I mean, what a way for him to finish the year as well. Okay, so, Ronaldo Souza is another aging foe, but got incredible jiu-jitsu and a really underrated striking game as well. But he has been knocked out a little easy in fights previous. And what a way to be knocked out, though. But you can't take away from the creativity of Kevin Holland. He's creative. He's unorthodox. He'll hit you from weird angles on the feet. He'll do weird things on the feet, but he also does weird things on the ground. But effectively, he beats Renato Souza on the ground, effectively. It was in a grounded situation, and he found a way to really use that space quite intelligently. People just might think and assume that he just caught a lucky punch. Again, I always state that I don't believe in luck. It was not a luck at all. He turned himself to the side to generate more power in the shot from his back. That ain't easy to do. A lot of people rabbit punch off the back. He created power, and that helped get the win, and it was great for him. This guy's such a good character. He quite often talks in there. He's got bravado. He's certainly going to have a very, very active and very interesting 2021. And I love watching the guy.
Yes, yeah, 100%. Next on my list was Jan Blauser. We kind of talked about him as well. So I got to focus on these two fighters, because these two fighters are actually were basically the last two on my short list. My final 3 for Fighter of the Year sort of short list are Davison Figueiredo, Zhang Huaili, and Jake Hadley. And when I whittle it down, I look at Zhang Huaili, and ultimately I don't put her as Fighter of the Year because she didn't fight as much as someone like, say, Kevin Holland. She had what, in my opinion, is the greatest fight of all time, but she didn't or hasn't been massively active. I think it's like, I don't know if that's, but then when you have a fight like she did against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, maybe that is a once a year fight. Do you know what I mean? Like, it was so brutal, so bloody, so physical that maybe you could only do that once a year. But I think some of it was to do with visas and COVID and,
I think
and this sort of thing as well.
Right now, I think it would be unfair to sort of like group the female and the men into a bracket where they're contesting for Fighter of the Year all in one bracket, because the fighters can, the male fighters can fight so much more often. Yeah, because the pool of fighters is so much more thick and dense, so of course they can fight more often. The women don't have that luxury yet, so I think that would be a little unfair to contest. But it would be at that Zhang and Shevchenko. They've both been really, really, truly impressive. Who you would pick out of either of those, I don't know, but they're both the standouts in the winners. Joanna, she struggled of late. If you think of what was her stats, I mean, I think she's only won 2 of her last 6 or something along those lines. She lost something like, she's lost 4 of her last 6 fights. Not to say that she's not looked fantastic.
Still a capable fighter, isn't she? But
absolutely. But she had something like a 14 fight win streak leading up to the time that now she's got women that can actually compete with her and beat her. She's kind of struggling with the results, getting the actual results in. Again, every one of those losses have been fantastic performances from her. But yeah, it goes to show you what kind of females are coming into the divisions, and even people like Joanna, who's looking so dominant a few years ago, now struggling. I think it was that Rose.
She was 40-0, wasn't she? And then she said some not nice things to Rose Namajunas. And
it's just that way. Yeah, she got beat 2 times. One of them was with was it a slam or something? Was it a takedown?
Yeah, she slammed her down and then pummeled her face.
That's right.
If I remember correctly.
Then got beat on a decision the second time around. I think maybe
she hasn't been the same since then, has she?
Yeah, well, I'm not even saying that she hasn't been the same. I just think maybe she knows she's not invincible anymore, and that may have edged towards maybe her getting these close losses that she's had thereafter. It's hard to really know, but it's good to see Rose coming back. I'm not too sure what her commitment is to MMA. She's got a strange girl, isn't she? I'm not too sure whether she's wholly committed for chasing the title, but she absolutely could be a title contender.
She's very talented, isn't she?
Did she fight just once, I think, in 2020, I believe?
Yeah, I think so.
But got a good win. That was over that Jessica Andrade, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think so.
That she had previously lost to, I think. But yeah, she returned her loss and got the win over her. So she could absolutely be relevant for the division. It'd be great to have her in the mix again if she fights more frequent in 2021.
Yeah, 100%, mate. There's so many talented fighters that we could discuss. We haven't really touched on the British contingent, which I'm sure we'll touch on in a minute. But we've hit an hour and a half, so I don't want to go on too much longer. So what we're going to do, there's people like Qatar, Khabib, Amanda Ribas had a really good year. Lauren Murphy, Curtis Blades had a very good year. Jamal Hill, Joaquin Buckley. There's so many, real good fighters. But I'm going to put you on the spot, as I like to do, and I'm going to ask you to tell me who is your MMA male fighter of the year. I think it'd be hard pushed to fight against Figueiredo. I think is to me. I just think, he's had the wins on the ground. He's had the wins on the feet. He's got the wins on decision. Okay, got pushed to a draw, but he's been active and not avoided anyone. He's had some real tough fights. And he was the chap he beat twice. My goodness, he fought
Benavidez. He fought Benavidez and decimated him the second time around. I'd say for me, for the dominance and the toughness of fights that he's had. So people like Israel Adesanya seem to have made such easy work. You could say, well, shouldn't he deserve it? Maybe so, but I think for the fact that he's had some real tough matchups and he's been in the wars as well, and always seems to come away with the victory, or come away keep holding the belt. So it weren't a victory in the last time around, but he still kept the belt with that draw. I'd say for him. But there's so many other great fighters during the year, really. I mean, Boy Thompson, he impresses me. 37 years old, and the last performance he put on was really incredible against a really dangerous opponent in Neil. But I think it's an interesting year as well for the falling and the demise of some of the fighters. Junior Desantis really not looked himself, and I think he's on a 4-fight loss. He lost against Francis Ngannou, Curtis Blades, Rosenstruck, and then just recently Cyril Gainer. Really, really struggling, and I can't see him having much of a future. Robbie Lawler on another, what a great fighter he's been in the past. Another guy past his mid-30s and not looking himself. But he's had losses against Rafael dos Santos, Ben Askren, when he got bulldog choked. You got Colby Covington, who's had another fantastic year that another fighter that's had, but he had that loss against Usman. Neil Magny, he's had his losses as well. There's a few fighters out there that have really had tough year. Tyron Woodley, Kevin Gastelum,
Tony Ferguson.
Tony Ferguson, but Gastelum, he was 10-0 at one point. Then he had a loss against Till, Jack Manson, Israel Adesanya. He's really had a hard time lately. And of course, if you can even include this because of he's had an incredible fight career, but Anderson Silva, really fell by the wayside. And at his age, of course, I suppose you're going to. But we have seen some fighters really fall by the wayside this year as well, which is kind of sad to see, and fighters getting cut, fighters transferring over to Bellator. There's been a sad year as much as it's been an exciting one for new talent, and with in that comes the new, out must go the old, and we're seeing Father Time catch up on some of these fighters, and I don't think we'll be seeing a lot of them, if not nothing at all of them, in 2021.
Yeah, so we've obviously seen Khabib and Anderson Silva retire this year. So I'm going to put you on the spot again. Who for the Danny Batten Fight Show? Who has had the worst year? It's a really hard one, I think, because there's a few contenders.
I think from the fall from great expectations and for disappointment for the fight that never happened, really is Ferguson. This guy was, going to be fighting Khabib. And me, I was caught up with his wins and
ready for that fight.
Yeah, but now you've seen him perform not so well. I mean, Gaethje just put such a number on him. He really, really did. And Gaethje would have been, for me, the fighter of the year had he performed valiantly against Khabib. But it was really, truly disappointing against Khabib.
Yeah.
But, is that because Khabib is just so untouchable?
Just
but he really didn't look very good. His boxing fell apart and everything. So it's kind of like really let down with what I think could have been a closer fight had he kept himself together. It was almost like he let the pressure get at him somewhat. But yeah, for when you think he was right up, the Ferguson was right up there, the centre of attention, the fight still never happened. And then he had that devastating loss and then really just lost it. He's just lost his rhythm. With that last fight that he had, and I don't think I would be too chuffed to see him in 2021.
Well, we had a disagreement, didn't we, recently on one of the shows where I think one of us said he should take a break for the first part of the year to try and recover and heal, and one of us said no, he should get back in and just get that rhythm back. It's a difficult one. He's taken a lot of damage, Tony Ferguson. Even in his wins, he's taken a lot of damage, which catches up with you as you get older. Who's your female fighter of the year?
Well, like I said, I think that's a toss-up between Zhang Weili and Chefchenko. Who you pick out of those? I mean, I suppose Shevchenko she's been pretty. I think she's been more active, hasn't she?
Yeah, she has. You did say that. Sorry, mate. I forgot.
I'd be pushed and leaning towards her, and she's more attractive as well.
So, who is, or what was the best fight of 2020?
Oh my God! We've been treated to a few of
blinders.
You know what? There's some that you can easily forget about. But do you remember Emmett versus Burgos? Yeah, do you remember that fight?
I do remember. Vaguely.
Burgos is he nudges forward constantly. This guy, and he's a big guy at the weight division. But Emmett, they were both throwing strikes hard as they could from start to finish, and Burgos just began to fade. And Emmett, I mean, he's not a young fighter, but always comes in good shape. Always, his cardio is faultless every single time. It's kind of like oh my God, what's the name of the guy he was lightweight, went down? Oh my goodness, I'm so bad at bringing up names. Real legend. He was lightweight, went to featherweight, and then gone down to bantamweight. Oh my goodness me.
Jose Aldo.
No. He's lost against Jose Aldo twice. I'm going to get his name up, but damn it! But he's always fit, even though he's aging somewhat. Always super fit. Emmett's one of those for me. I think he kind of like gets overshadowed a little bit, but he's someone that I think is a real top-notch martial artist, and that was a great fight. Oh my God! Then you got the Poirier versus Hooker. Hooker was in two amazing fights throughout the year. Hooker, when he fought Poirier, that was a fantastic fight, and Hooker versus Felder, another fantastic fight.
Great
my God! So I don't know. How'd you pick the best? Do you mean you have put me on the spot?
So difficult.
For the females, it'd be Zhang and Joanna. If you're going to tear them apart, and I think for the men, the Figueiredo versus Moreno. I think that was just
they're the two for me.
Like
if you held a gun to my head and you said, right, you have to pick what is the best fight of 2020, I would probably go with Joanna versus Zhang, but and the draw between Moreno and Figueiredo are the kind of the two. But like, I've really enjoyed watching Justin Gaethje fight this year, I gotta say. if it wasn't for that Khabib fight, I feel like he's the runaway fight of the year. But because he was so disappointing in that Khabib fight, Figueiredo obviously is just like this all-round beast that just takes it. I've just brought up that Josh Emmett Shane Burgos fight to remind myself of it, and wow.
Yeah, it's a brilliant
go
fight.
Back and watch that later.
Yeah,
because
it's
that
a good
looks
one.
brutal. I just brought up the highlights. So I was trying to find Max Holloway. Is that the one you were thinking of?
No.
Jose Aldo beat him twice. I'm trying to. Oh no, he lost to Jose Aldo twice. Trying to find this fighter you were trying to think of.
I will. Hang on 1 second.
Cub
I'll find
Swanson.
No. Although he done really well, didn't he, the other day?
He did have a little revitalization. Come on, you got to find this name, Dan, because you're terrible with names.
I just can't bring them up.
Vera.
No.
Trying to find someone who Jose Aldo's beaten twice.
I'm sure he's beaten him twice. Just bear with me. Right, I'm
Jose Aldo. But yeah, that is so just while Danny's looking for this name.
Yeah, look, there's another fighter that done really well this year, Peter Yan.
Yeah, God, yeah.
I mean, he's done incredibly well.
Volkanovski.
Right, Frankie Edgar.
Frankie Edgar. There we go.
Yeah, I'm sure he fought him twice, didn't he?
I think so, yeah.
Just checking.
I think he did.
Just checking.
He did. He beat him.
He did. Yeah, he beat him 2 times. But Frankie Edgar, I mean, he's not the youngest of dudes, but he always comes with bags of cardio. You never see this guy having cardio being a consequence of any result, no matter how fast-paced the fight goes.
Yeah, 100%. It's I can't wait until the UFC starts up again. The first fight back, we've got Holloway versus Qatar. That is going to be an unbelievable fight because that's the 16th of Jan straight in. Holloway versus Qatar. Calvin Qatar was so impressive this year.
Yeah, he has been. That's a lightweight, right?
Featherweight.
Is that a featherweight, is it?
It is. Okay. So that's our kind of roundup of 2020. We've had a little chat about a bit of everything. What I would like to close the show by saying is thank you to everyone who's watched, followed, subscribed, listened, downloaded, whatever it may be, sent questions, whatever it may be. We really appreciate you supporting the show. Please come and follow the social media pages. The Instagram page is constantly ticking over these days, which is great. I'd like to get some more followers on the Twitter page for the show. It's at Danny Batten FS on Twitter and Instagram. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We will probably take the show live on YouTube at some point this year, but to do that, we just want to make sure that we got that live audience and slot right so people can get involved, because it does bring such a different dynamic to the show. I know we do a live football show Monday and Friday, and it really does, it makes it a lot of fun, even more fun than what it already is. There's so many fighters and so many moments and so many fights that have happened in 2020 that we could have talked about this for hours and hours. We've done an hour 40. That's pretty good. I'm also absolutely busting for the loo, so I'm going to wrap it up. Danny, I would like to say thank you very much, sir, for your friendship, for your joining me on the podcast for 55 episodes and getting me through the shit year that 2020 has been. We are nearly on the back of 2020. I'm sure that 2020 has a couple of more surprises for us before the year's about gone. But in the meantime, I thank you, sir.
Yeah, and a big thank you also, Si. My weekends are always a standard set routine, and now I've got a new routine, but it's one that I always look forward to each week. It's been great getting to know you, great getting to know the guests, and I just hope that everyone who's listening on a regular basis enjoy it as much as we do by doing it.
Indeed, spot on. And I will say, anyone who downloads and listens, get in touch, send us messages on the Instagram or the Ace Podcast Nation page or the Twitter page. Tell us, because we're going from next week, we're back into the retro review, so we'll be reviewing the whatever UFC we're up to. I think off the top of my head it was about UFC 12, and we'll be doing one boxing or MMA fight on top of that each week, where we'll just do like an hour 15 talking old UFC and old boxing or MMA. A lot of fun. So you send us what you want us to watch, and we will watch and talk about it. in the meantime, we bid you a farewell. Happy New Year to everyone, and we will see you in 2021.
Defending champion, welcome, Danny Batten. Fucking number one. You win.
You're listening to Ace Podcast Nation, the hottest new podcast network and YouTube channel in the UK, featuring original series, top guests, expert analysts, and more. Check out facebook.com/AceCastNation for news on latest guests and shows. Watch every show in full at youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation.